Imagine a world where barren deserts bloom with life, where endless dunes of sand give way to green fields, and the air once filled with dust now hums with the gentle sounds of life. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But in the heart of northern China, in a place once written off by nature and man alike, that dream is becoming reality. This is the story of Dalad Bana, a region once consumed by the Gobi Desert's wrath, and how 1,000,000 tiny, fur-covered creatures became unlikely heroes in humanity's fight against one of Earth's greatest environmental threats, desertification. Picture it now. The Gobi, a vast, brutal expanse stretching for thousands of miles where the sun beats down mercilessly by day and freezing winds howl by night. For decades, this land was the very definition of hopelessness. Farmers abandoned their homes, crops withered under waves of advancing sand, and dust storms so massive they could darken the skies as far away as Japan became a cruel routine. The desert was winning, until the day humans decided to fight back, not with machines or weapons, but with something infinitely more surprising: rabbits. Yes, rabbits, more than 1,000,000 of them. And as strange as it sounds, these tiny animals would go on to transform one of the harshest landscapes on the planet into a thriving oasis of life. To understand why this is so extraordinary, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. Desertification isn't just a local problem, it's a global crisis. Every year, the United Nations warns us that 12 million hectares of fertile land, an area larger than entire countries, turns to dust. That means soil that once fed families, supported forests and sustained wildlife is now nothing but barren wasteland. In China alone, by the 1980s, a quarter of the nation's land was classified as desert or desertified, directly affecting more than 400 million people. The Gobi was expanding fast, swallowing farmland, choking rivers, and burying villages alive. Beijing itself began to feel the consequences as sandstorms swept through the capital, turning daylight into dusk. Something had to be done, but traditional solutions, planting trees, irrigation, failed miserably. Trees couldn't survive the harsh winds, the poor soil, or the lack of water. Their roots couldn't hold, and one by one they withered and died. It was clear that humanity couldn't simply fight the desert. It had to learn how to work with it. And so at the dawn of the 21st century, in Inner Mongolia's Dalad Bana region, a radical experiment began, an idea so bold that many dismissed it as madness. Scientists, farmers, and local policymakers joined forces to try something that had never been done before: to rebuild an ecosystem from the ground up. They didn't start by planting trees. They started by rebuilding the soil, conserving water, and reintroducing life one step at a time. They used satellites to monitor land changes, drones to map erosion, and ancient ecological wisdom to complement cutting-edge technology. But their most audacious move came in 1999, the release of 1.2 million Rex rabbits into the desert. Now, at first glance, that sounds like a recipe for chaos. After all, rabbits have a reputation for overbreeding and destroying vegetation. But these weren't ordinary rabbits, and this wasn't an ordinary plan. The Rex rabbit, originally bred for its thick, plush fur, is uniquely suited for survival in extreme environments. With dense coats that insulate against the desert's blazing heat by day and freezing cold by night, these hardy creatures could live where other livestock couldn't. They don't need much food, and are content to feed on sparse desert vegetation without destroying it. Most importantly, they reproduce quickly, meaning their population could explode within months, multiplying their environmental impact. But the real genius lay not in their numbers, but in their behavior. As these rabbits hopped across the desert, they dug burrows, small holes that aerated the compacted sand. To the untrained eye, these burrows seemed insignificant, but to scientists they were the beginning of a miracle. Every burrow allowed air and water to seep deeper into the ground, breaking up the hard crust that had strangled plant life for decades. When rare rains came, water didn't just run off the surface anymore. It soaked into the soil, replenishing groundwater and feeding the roots of new vegetation. Then came another gift: manure. Rabbit droppings, rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, became the perfect natural fertilizer. Bit by bit, the barren soil began to change. Tiny green shoots appeared. Native grasses, shrubs, and hardy desert plants started taking root where once there had been only lifeless sand. With plants came insects, then birds, then small mammals. a ripple effect of life that transformed desolation into diversity. But the rabbits alone couldn't do it. The Dalad Bana project was never about one species. It was about balance. Alongside the rabbits, humans used biomulching, spreading layers of organic matter across the land to retain moisture and protect the soil from erosion. Rows of native shrubs were planted as windbreaks to slow down the relentless gusts that carried sand for miles. Rainwater harvesting systems captured every precious drop during the short monsoon season, storing it for the long dry months. Satellites and drones continued to watch from above, collecting data to track progress and fine-tune strategies. Slowly but surely, the lifeless expanse began to change. By 2010, over 15,000 hectares of desert had been reclaimed. The transformation was nothing short of breathtaking. Sand dunes, once towering and silent, were now dotted with green. Grasses swaying in the breeze, trees casting shade, and farmers tending to newly revived fields. Villages that had been abandoned saw families returning home. The air that once carried choking dust now carried the songs of birds. The project didn't just change the landscape, it changed lives. And soon the world took notice. In 2009, the United Nations recognized Dalad Bana as one of the most successful desert reclamation projects ever undertaken. But the impact reached far beyond China's borders. Countries facing similar challenges began to take interest. Saudi Arabia, where 80% of the land is covered in desert, sent delegations to study the project. The United Arab Emirates, struggling with water scarcity and declining farmland, drew inspiration from its techniques. The Saudi Green Initiative, aiming to plant 10 billion trees by 2030, and the UAE's mangrove restoration programs both borrowed lessons from Dalad Bana, most notably the importance of rebuilding soil, managing water, and creating self-sustaining ecosystems rather than simply planting trees for show. Even Africa's Great Green Wall, an ambitious project spanning the Sahel to restore 100 million hectares of degraded land, found guidance in Dalad Bana's holistic approach. The message was clear: fighting desertification isn't about conquering nature. It's about understanding it. It's about harmony, not dominance. And that's what made this project revolutionary. It taught the world that environmental crises don't need high-tech billion-dollar fixes. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective, and in this case, a million rabbits. Think about that. Tiny creatures, each no bigger than a loaf of bread, became the engineers of rebirth for an entire ecosystem. Their burrows became lifelines. Their droppings became fertilizer. Their presence triggered a cascade of restoration that no machine could have replicated. It's poetic, really. Nature saving itself through its own resilience, guided gently by human hands. But the story doesn't end in China. The Dalad Bana project sparked a global movement, a shift in thinking about how we tackle ecological collapse. And it carries a message that reaches every corner of the planet. Small actions matter. Big change starts small. Maybe it's a rabbit digging a burrow. Maybe it's a person planting a native tree. Maybe it's someone like you choosing to care. Desertification may sound distant, something happening in faraway lands, but its consequences reach us all. Over 250 million people worldwide are directly affected by land degradation, and billions more feel its ripple effects through food insecurity, rising temperatures, and water shortages. Dust storms don't respect borders. The air that chokes Beijing could one day drift to another continent. The solutions, too, must cross borders. The miracle of Dalad Bana reminds us that even in the most hopeless situations, there's always room for life to return, if we let it. So imagine this once more. Deserts across the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia, not barren but blooming, farmers returning to their land, children breathing clean air, wildlife thriving, where once there was silence. Imagine the planet healing itself, not through grand miracles but through the quiet persistence of life. The rabbits of Dalad Bana didn't just dig burrows, they dug a path to a better future. They proved that solutions can come from the unlikeliest places, that hope can be reborn in the harshest soil. As the wind sweeps across the now green fields of Dalad Bana, it carries more than the scent of fresh grass. It carries a lesson that when humanity works with nature, not against it, even the most desolate corners of the earth can flourish again. The question now is not whether it can be done. It already has. The question is, will we follow their example? Because if 1 million rabbits can make the desert bloom, imagine what 8 billion humans could do if we all did our part.